Welcome everyone to the FJR Boardroom, episode 2. I'm here with Neil and Max, and we're going to be talking about the downward pressure on salaries that has been spoken about a lot. I suppose on a day where Boris Johnson has sort of frozen MPs' salaries due to sort of the backlash, we thought it'd be quite a decent thing just to talk about and actually, I suppose, take some anecdotal evidence of what we're actually seeing in the markets across London and then across, I suppose, Manchester and the north. So, Neil, what are you seeing down in London at the moment?
To what we saw in the report, it's highlighting this downward pressure on salaries. I mean, that absolutely needs to be expected, I guess. If there's a decrease in vacancies, there's an increase in candidates availability. That's clearly going to put supply and demand will put a downward pressure on the price. I think the added thing that we're seeing right now is with the overspill of the IR35 situation, there's also a plethora of contractors on the market as well that are now considering perm opportunities. So with all that going on in the market, it is making for a very challenging time when candidates are looking to secure the right level of salary for the right opportunity.
Yeah, Max. I mean, how does it compare in the north?
I think, look, it's no different to Neil. There's been, over the last 6 months in particular, there's been a steady decline of starting salaries across finance and our HR brands in particular, with September being the biggest decline. I think from my side, there seems to be a general perception from a client perspective that because there is a higher volume of candidates on the marketplace, they have more choice. And by having more choice, it means they can squeeze the salaries down further, clearly to reduce their cost within the business, and that they feel they can bring in still a great caliber of individual cheaper, for want of a better phrase. As mentioned, that seems to be pretty clear in our finance and HR brand, but from a technology perspective, we haven't seen that as much on a permanent basis.
I think following on from that, I think the real difference that we're seeing at the moment, if you're a permanent candidate and you're currently in a permanent role and you are active and you're looking for a new opportunity and those opportunities are out there, that's a very, very different bargaining position and situation from if you're a candidate that has been in permanent employ and is now for an unfortunate situation found themselves on the market without a role. That's a very different bargaining situation. And I guess the third bit to that is if you are in a situation where there are maybe a couple, 2 or 3 companies interested in your services, that then adds in a sort of a bit of a further dynamic to that whole sort of supply and demand situation. So I think we're from a specific standpoint, we're definitely seeing very different attitudes from candidates that are working versus candidates that have been out of work and maybe been out of work for a bit of time.
Yeah. And I mean, is there any advice you'd give to those candidates that have sadly found themselves on the market at the moment? So, they are seeking employment and there is a level of urgency around it. Is there any advice you would give them around sort of, I suppose, managing those salary negotiations or what would you say to that group of people? Because obviously it's a pretty tough time for many people. There is, market increase in candidates on the market, but clearly people still have to pay their bills and all the rest of it. So is there any advice that either of you would give to candidates in that situation?
I think for me, certainly from a northern perspective, if you don't mind if I jump in, Neil, it clearly is a very challenging time, okay, for candidates on the market and for employers. And people have got to look after their own interest. But my bit of advice to candidates would be, don't just sell yourself short, because what that could create is you could have your own negative perception in 6 months' time and be on the market again, starting to look for another role if for whatever reason your salary isn't increased. And look at the bigger picture. What else is the business offering? Is that the continued level of flexibility? Is it bonuses? What other benefits are you getting from your employer that isn't just focused on base salary? But ultimately, don't sell yourself short, because you don't want to be in the position where it has a negative effect and you are in 6 months, when hopefully markets start to return to a bit of normality, that you are immediately starting to look for another job, because the impact that then has on your CV could be slightly damaging or create more challenges further down the line.
I think it's a good point, Max. I think along with that, and maybe a slightly different view as well, the point about any opportunity you take isn't just about base salary. Really important, right? It's not. There's so much more to any role than just base salary, whether it be package, opportunity, environment, people you're working with, etc., etc. But just the advice I'd give out is you've got to be. I think when candidates are working with recruiters, we know how it is, right? Some recruitment doesn't always have the best reputation in the market, and sometimes you might be working with a candidate for the first time, and they've had a bad experience with a recruiter before, and there's not always that trust there. Sometimes candidates won't always trust you. At the end of the day, as a recruiter, you clearly want to get the best. You want to get the best deal for your client. The client pays our bills. So we want to make sure we get them great service. Likewise, we want to make sure we get the best deal for the candidate as well. And we are literally facilitating in the middle. And we've had a couple of situations where a candidate will be holding out for a salary level. 6 months ago they were on X. They've been out of work. They do need work, but they're still holding out for the same salary level they were on 6 months ago, and they're pushing back on the recruiter, sort of saying, look, that's what I know. I'm not going to go for anything less, and that's fine. As long as we'll know the parameters on what we can work with a client and with a candidate, and we'll try and negotiate the best deal for both parties. But we've had situations where we've then gone back to the candidate and we've been very honest and sort of said, look, you're pricing yourself out of the role. Are you sure there's no flexibility? We're getting to that point where you're going to have to decline. And then candidates have found themselves a week later, a few days later, just sort of thinking, maybe I should have taken it. And it's too late. They've lost the opportunity because it is a competitive situation and there are multiple candidates competing for opportunities. So just really clear, concise, open, honest dialogue with whoever you're talking to, whether it be us as a recruiter or directly with the client. Just be really open and honest about what you can and can't and will and won't do.
Yeah. And what about, I suppose on the flip side of that, obviously you've got companies, clients that we're working with. Clearly, from a revenue and a sales perspective, they're all under pressure to manage costs. But, they're under pressure to I suppose, reduce those costs. And one of the ways to do it is through reducing salaries. Is there any advice you'd sort of give to the clients? Because I suppose my concern may be that for some of those clients, they're going to create some sort of engagement bump over the next 6 to 12 months as the market does come back. Is there anything you would sort of say to the clients that are looking to put that downward pressure on salaries?
I think for me, it's as challenging as it might be in the current economic climate. Don't be short-sighted. You have to have in the back of your mind candidate experience and that individual joining your business, what they feel the experience has been like, and do they feel valued when they join your business. If you are putting downward pressure on that individual to accept a lower salary, which, as Neil says, it does happen, you could be creating a scenario where in 6 months' time you're back to market because that individual has been offered X amount more somewhere else. So just try and have that view in the back of your mind around candidate experience and that medium to long term rather than just about the here and now. But I appreciate how difficult that is.
Yeah, don't disagree. Again, we have got specific situations for specific types of roles, specific types of candidates where clients just aren't in a situation or position to be able to put that downward pressure on. Probably more around technology. We still have situations where there are candidates receiving multiple offers and clients are therefore having to come in with their best offer as their first offer in order to secure the services. So that's kind of going contrary to some of the stuff we've said. But likewise, clearly your candidates that are not working and do need work are effectively, you are going to be in that situation where they are going to be prepared to accept less. And some of those, absolutely, they're going to be thinking, let's ride this out for 6 months, for 9 months, it's some work, it gets some money in the door. And once the economic situation reverses and is on stronger ground, they're going to vote with their feet and take another opportunity. But likewise, there are some candidates that are going to say, look, I get it. It's the supply and demand. It's a different economy. I'll accept lower now. and then get on site with that client and do everything they can do to prove their self-worth and prove that they're an asset to the business, and hopefully find themselves in a better position to negotiate a pay rise in the future, because that company took the risk or offered them the opportunity to go in and shine, and they'll hopefully repay that loyalty in the future.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be really interesting to see this sort of play out over the next 3 months, and certainly over the next 6 months, with the various different lockdowns that we're beginning to see, and obviously how the economy performs. But look, gents, thank you very much for your time. I think some really interesting insights in there, and thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you on episode 3 in about 4 weeks' time. Take care. Cheers.